Welcome everyone to this review of Until Dawn for the PlayStation 4, the newest kind of exclusive for the PS4. And I know exclusives are looked at a little bit more harshly, I think. Fanboys like to compete against one another for which system is better, so exclusives are always looked at with a much more sterner eye, I think. And with the type of game this is, I already kind of feel like I know how reviews are going to go and how people are thinking about it. I got to see a lot of that in my live stream. I actually just got done live streaming it. And I got to see a lot of people's thoughts throughout the night while I was playing it. And so I wanted to kind of give my thoughts and opinions, and I can make it really easy and simple for a lot of people whether or not this is the kind of game for them. If you like games like the Telltale games like Walking Dead or Back to the Future the Game of Thrones, games like Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, you're probably going to like this game. The way it plays, the gameplay-wise, you're probably going to like it. If those kind of games you don't like at all, also like Life is Strange, like if you don't like those kind of games at all, you're not gonna like this game. You're not like gonna like the way it is. It's one there's more interactive movie style games, a lot of quick time events, interaction with objects is like kind of going around, picking up a thing, looking at it a little bit, getting a little bit of story or whatever you need from it, and walking kind of slowly and methodically through things. You're not running through, blasting enemies with shotguns or anything like that. But, so if you're not into those kind of things, skip on Until Dawn immediately. There's no point in even trying. This game isn't going to convince you or change your opinions on these style of games. That's first and foremost. Now, when it comes to the game itself, it is a horror game. It uses a ton of horror cliches and tropes throughout the entire experience. A lot of people may look at parts of this and be like, oh, that's a rip-off of this, or that's a rip-off of that. And to me, I think more of like, maybe not tribute, but I don't mind it. I think there's elements from these other horror movies and all that are spread around. I mean, they cover stuff like Saw and typical slasher movies like Friday the 13th, the movies like even zombie movies and other monster movie stuff and all is kind of thrown into this all in one. So I think it does a good job of experience all these types of different horror games all in, or horror movies at least, all in one game. One of the first things I have to talk about, though, is the graphics, and they stand out immediately. There is some beautiful looking graphics in this game, great particle effects. It takes place on a snowy mountain, and because of that, of course, there's a lot of snow everywhere, but you're walking through some forest, not only inside of this large house that you guys are staying in, but also some few other environments as well, and all the environments that you explore and get to go around all look beautiful. The characters themselves are modeled fantastically. They not only look like the actors that are portraying the characters, it's everything to do with the facial expressions, very much like LA Noire in a way to me, just looking at all the different ways the face can kind of contort and give emotion, which is something that I'm still kind of getting used to in the more modern gaming age. I mean, just from the very beginning of the game when you're at the title screen, and whatever character is on the title screen, depending upon how far you're in the game, the character that's on the title screen is different. But you can actually manipulate the character's face, moving it around and all that kind of stuff, so it's really, really cool just to look at that. I mean, you could probably mess with that for 5 to 10 minutes, just being wowed by what you're looking at. Now, as far as the gameplay itself goes, there are a ton of quick time events. It's very, like I said, slow and methodical, but it works well enough. I didn't really have too many times where the quick time events didn't work, or I ended up doing something I didn't want to do. Now, of course, that means I had to pay attention the entire time. It's one of those games you really can't sit down and kind of like enjoy the cutscenes. You gotta be watching throughout everything in the game because you never know when something's gonna pop up or when you're gonna have to make a quick judgment or move, and all those movements and all those quick time events do affect the game. The one thing that this game really does the best is the whole choice factor, the quick time events, and making the choices between the characters really matters. This is not a game that you can just go, like, you make a mistake, you do something you didn't like, and then you can go back to a previous checkpoint. You can't do that in this game. You have to play the entire game from start to finish before you can then go back and revisit chapters, which I think is a really cool effect. That way you make a mistake, you have to live with it. Now, there may be some people out there that are not going to like that are like, oh, well, I made that choice, I didn't really like it, I wish I could really go back. That's what multiple playthroughs are for, or in the case of this game, once you do complete it and you can go back to previous episodes and kind of make those changes that you would like, so you end up getting the ending that you would prefer over everything else. So you're not necessarily going to get the best ending or the ending you like the best on your very first go-around. And all the choices themselves, even stuff minor like relationships between characters, whether you're like breaking up a fight between a couple or trying to get a girl to like you more, or snooping on your friends or telling your friends that other things are going on between other friends. All of that does affect things as the game goes forward. They use the whole butterfly effect type of thing to really make differences in the game. Something like you may be in a cutscene with a character and then see a baseball bat or something, and then you want to move that baseball bat for whatever reason, and by doing so that will actually come into play later in the game. It may be hours later in the game, but you're going to be happy that you may have moved that, or opened up the door, or unlocked something, or looked at something. So every single little choice you do make seems to really affect the world, and that's what I really like the most about this. There are so many games out there nowadays that give you choices, or at least the illusion of choices, but in the end, your choices don't necessarily matter. In this game, every choice you make may be the difference between life or death for these characters. And as far as the characters go themselves, they're mostly horror cliches that you would expect, like the nerd and the jock and maybe, you know, the temptress or whatever they may be. But you may hate a character at first and be like, oh, I can't wait for that character to die, or I know that character's going to die first. But you may end up growing on you. You may get later on in the game and be like, I know this is probably going to kill this character, so I don't actually want to do this choice now. I don't want to actually even make that decision. I actually like this character now. All the characters, while they do live in their cliches, they develop as the game goes on and get more in depth, and you kind of feel for the characters, and you get to see their kind of different quirks and stuff like that. Even when every character is introduced, you get like a basic idea of them. Tell you maybe who they're in a relationship with, or what kind of traits they may have, like intelligence or things that you have to deal with. And even with the characters, at any time you actually can press like the R1 button and kind of look at a menu, and you kind of get to see how traits are changing with that character or relationships as the game goes further on. Are you really kind of making the character feel better or worse depending upon what choices you are making? And there's a ton of possibilities with these characters in the long run as far as keeping them alive, or if they end up dying. You can save or kill just about everyone in the game, so that really puts the power in your hand, and what I think makes it more so than just necessarily watching just a movie. You're choosing. It's like a choose your own horror story here, because you're getting to pick who lives and who dies. And that's something that I don't think we've really seen too much of in not just horror games, but in games in general. And while the story is in a lot of ways sometimes cliche, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to guess every single thing that's going to happen as the game goes on. Something you may think, or you may know who is doing this or who's doing that, or whatever, may change as you go on. Now, there are some elements of the story, especially later on, and I'm doing my best not to spoil anything for the game, as it's best for you to experience yourself. However, there is like a certain kind of twist that goes on later in the game that I can definitely see people are going to be very hit or miss on. They're either going to really like the direction the game ends up going, or it may be the turning point. It may be a point where they're just like, I really like the game up until. Now, sound design in the game is another aspect I'd like to touch on. There's not a ton of music or anything like that. The music that is there is fitting. However, it's about the sound design. I can imagine playing this game with headphones or with a surround system. There's so many like crunches and stuff when you're just moving through the snow, or the squeaks of the boards when you're inside of the cabins, and things falling over. Even stuff like gunshots or fire that plays throughout, or people hitting and landing on things. They all sound and make you feel even more immersed in the game itself. I mean, hearing like screams from a distance and slowly but surely getting closer and closer to the sounds can really make you feel uneasy and make you feel tensed up, waiting for your character to kind of get and find out what exactly is going on. Now, one last thing I do want to touch on before I get to my final rating for the game is I have to praise the game creators for how well the game is put together. There are no glitches, there are no bugs, there is no freezing and no crashing. Heck, there's not even a day one patch, which is something that's very common with games. We're seeing multi-gig day one patches for so many of the modern games. Now this may be a type of game that doesn't lend itself necessarily to have or need something like that, but there's so many games that come out nowadays that are just a bug-filled mess at launch, and this game, Until Dawn, is not one of those. So regardless of if you like this style of game or anything like that, you have to give credit to the creators of the game for making just an overall solid project, making sure that the game was fully finished before releasing it. There's so much time. I hate hearing from people, why do game companies keep releasing these half-finished games just about? Until Dawn, you did an amazing job making the game. And of course, in conclusion, I loved every second of this game. All 6.5 hours I very thoroughly enjoyed, but there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to hear that and immediately want to run out the door and get like, nope, I don't want anything to do with this game. 6.5 hours is nothing for a $60 price tag, which I fully understand. However, there's over 100 collectibles to get in the game, which collecting all the clues actually does affect the ending, so they're worth getting. There's totems to collect, which unlocks some more backstory to the game, that's actually pretty cool, as well as just all the butterfly choices. There are so many choices and so many ways to make the characters live or die, and getting to the end with all these different choices makes the game worth replaying multiple times. There's going to be people playing this game 3, 4, 5 times and still not seeing every possible result. And for that alone, I have to say that the game has much more replay value than some other bigger games that may be longer experiences. However, of course, with that price tag, everyone has to be picking and choosing what games they actually pick up for the full price. So this is one of those ones I can see a lot of people waiting for, and I cannot blame you one bit. I'm a huge horror fan. I love this style of gameplay, I love the storytelling and everything that was a part of this game, so I have no problem supporting it for the full $60. But for many of you out there, you may want to wait, you may want to rent it, or wait for a sale on it, wait for it to get $30 or $20. Look for it around Black Friday. There's probably going to be plenty of sales that will be including this game, and you may be able to get it bundled with other games for a nice price. Now with all that being said, my final rating for the game is a 7 out of 10. Now I know some people immediately, what 7? You're throwing nothing but praise at this game. But I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. It is relatively short, but because even with its shortness, the replay value is going to keep me coming back for more and wanting to replay it. But I do have some issues with some of the story. I wish there was a few more things I could have done in the game as far as choice-wise and stuff like that. And I wasn't a huge fan of some of the twists later on in the game, so I have to take a few points off for that. But when it comes to my scoring, a 5 is a mediocre game, and this game is far above that. The graphics and the look and feel of the game is enough to warrant it more than a 5. So anyway, guys, like I said, 7 out of 10. I'd like to see what you guys thought of the game. Comment down below and let me know what you think. I'm going to actually go and check out some other reviews now for myself to see what everyone else is saying about the game. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoy.